program that we do every quarter, just because of the uncertainty about the transmission through sewer, etc. But we will be resuming that once we have all the proper PPE in place. It won't look like normal. It'll be almost like hazmat suits or whatever, but I mean, that's what we're going to have to do. If there's an emergency, there's no question whatsoever that we would respond.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Barron, question?
Under Public Works on page 12, third point from the bottom there, it says building safety program for Public Works, Town of Fort McNeil is ongoing. And I'm just wondering if it, probably not tonight, but if it's possible to get an update on how that's going in relation to the municipal going towards core certification. So building the safety program, but with the intent of achieving core certification.
Right. So yeah, we enlisted Quest Training and Safety to basically the issue was not having a comprehensive confined space entry system in place and training. So that was, for me, with some immediate concerns with maintenance. That's why we basically enlisted them to do that. And there'll be excavations, will be the next part, and then we'll look at a comprehensive safety program for the town, which will be all departments. So that may well even go to tender, but this is just 2 items that are going to be part of that safety program that I really need to get in place right away. So that's what that is. Where it ties into the core safety program, perhaps we can expand on that at a later date, if that's okay.
Yeah, you got a thumbs up from Councillor Barron. Good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good.
Yeah. I wanted oh, sorry, I'll let Councillor Mitchell go first. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I just had a question for Julian, if I may.
Go ahead.
I noticed that there's a notation that we didn't get the grant for Beach Drive, but we did approve some spending for that. And I'm just wondering if you could tell us what's going on. What are the plans? Is any movement there yet?
Yeah, absolutely. So what happened? What's happening now, basically, is I had the geotechnical company come up yesterday, and we basically picked up where we left off in a year and a half ago or so. And we have toured the bank. We have actually dug some test pits like we did prior to the first phase. And then what will happen is Base Geotechnical will actually get a report to me, hopefully within the next 10 days. And then based on that, we'll move ahead with engaging McElhaney to help prepare a tender document for the actual works. But again, we're taking the advice and lead from the geotechnical company on this for obvious reasons. As it happens, like where we were to the north west end of Kaliva Gardens, basically, those properties were actually tagged as a fairly high risk in behind them, and it looked really positive yesterday. So I don't want to jump the gun, but it did not look as bad, anywhere near as bad as what we thought. However, we'll be installing quite a lot of drainage in that area. And just as a sort of a synopsis of our day yesterday, it looks as if it'll be much more of a, rather than an earth moving project, it's going to be much more of a drainage concentrated project. So ultimately we'll be able to get more work done for the same amount of money.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Julian. Yeah. Appreciate that.
Okay, Councillor Downey.
Just a question, Julie, did you say northwest of Caliva Gardens?
Yeah, like this towards the office. Yeah.
Okay. Now, my recollection is that the main concern was actually east of that, of Caliva Gardens.
There is another area of concern to the east, or southeast, or whichever. It's basically with talking with McElhaney Engineering and also with Base Geotechnical, and of course, myself representing the town, we collectively decided to start with this area just due to, basically, for lack of a better term, getting the biggest bang for our buck. We've already been in there. We have to put a little bit more drainage in behind the apartment buildings and concentrate that flow down the bank. There is a concern of a big outcropping at the northeast end of the apartment building, which was a big concern to the geotech. So that we're already in that area, so it made sense to move northwest behind basically the next 3 properties to the stairs that go down to Beach Drive. And then after that, we can progress to the next higher hazard area, which is to the southeast.
A follow-up. The one concern is that the volume of material west of Caliva Garden is not as significant as the volume east, and which is why east was more of a priority if we're talking about the safety of the residents living below.
Yeah, again, it's going on ultimately the advice of the geotechnical company as to what they perceive as to be the highest risk or the higher risk. I would have to look back at that report, the last Base Geotechnical report, and see, but I think they were equally as high. And basically what it is we're targeting the infilled gullies, which are what the highest hazard is. So courses might change a little bit here in what we find with the test pits. And that's the whole idea of gathering that information with the test pits. The infill gullies are the high hazard. And in November 2016, that slide appears to have been exactly one of those. So again, course might change slightly, but based on the geotechnical report is how we should move ahead, I believe.
Well, east is where that slide was in 2016. It was east of Caliva Gardens, correct?
Yeah. Correct. Yeah. Yeah. Several properties down, but correct. Yeah. It's a little ways away, but that's where it was. Yeah.
Are we still working off the same geotech reports that were done at that time?
Well, as council may remember, we did, this is the 3rd geotechnical company that we've engaged in this project. And in my recommendation, we should stick with them because they are, in my opinion, by far the best group that have got a good handle on this slide mitigation. They've gathered all the previous information from the other geotechnical firms and basically come up with this plan. So,
okay, I just wanted to be clear because my concern is about risk
yes.
more so than going after low-hanging fruit, where it's the risk management that we're really addressing along that bank. So thank you, Julian.
100%. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. I just wanted to make mention of the museum and the clearing out around there. Great job. Looks really good. I know that was a hard slog getting to that point. So well done. And I do have a question. So on the last couple of meetings that I've been on with the provincial government, they were talking about the path forward, and keeping in mind that there's only so many projects that you can manage. Are you looking at the capital projects that we have that have the possibility of employing local people? Just wondering about that.
Sorry, could,
so
Mayor,
for example,
elaborate?
sidewalks or something like that. You know, we normally employ a local company, which is probably struggling, that kind of thing.
Oh, you bet. Yeah, 100%. As far as the beach drive?
No,
goes,
I'm talking about projects in general. Yeah.
Yeah, projects in general, 100%. Yeah, and you know, through the Tilmer agreement and the community charter, of course, like, you know, we can not necessarily favor the local contractors, but they will definitely get a fair crack at any project that comes up. Question.
Great, thank you. Any other further questions for Julian? Okay, and so seeing none, can I have a motion, please, to accept the report as presented? All in favor? Oh, actually, we made that. Oh, no, yeah. First, second, and all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. Thanks again, Julian.
You're welcome.
2020 check listing. Move for a seat. Moved. Seconded. Any questions? Go ahead, Councillor Mitchell.
I'm just wondering if it's possible to, I don't want to ask right now, but I'd like to be able to ask for more detail on some of the items that are on that check listing. Would that be possible to, you know, contact somebody in the office and get some more information?
Yeah,
Term.
I'll let Claudia speak to that, but I know if I've ever had a question, it's not been a problem. I'm sure that you're able to seek clarification anytime you like. Claudia, would you like to just comment?
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell, through the mayor. Yes, that's not a problem. Actually, if you had any questions before the meeting too, you can just send us off an email and we can answer them for everybody's benefit. That's another option also. But of course, we can answer any of the questions you have about the checks. And that would be probably more myself or Laura that you'd need to ask.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the check listing? Seeing none, and all those in favor of receipt? Okay, opposed, carried. Here, I was muted the whole time. My turn. Or did you guys hear that? I think I was muted. On to the 2020 Seasonal Youth Employment Plan. Move for discussion. Okay, seconder. Great. What's your pleasure here, Council? Did you want to lead us off, Pete, or do you want to just go straight to fielding questions on this?
Thanks, Mayor Wickstrom. Any questions, if anybody's got any questions. We're, as everything dealing with COVID, we're sort of running as things change. So, you know, as the province makes announcements, our plans may change on what we can do. You know, if they tend to open up the province, we may have to look at employing more people at a quicker rate than anticipated. But right now, the anticipation is that we're going to still maintain our openings or closures as they currently are. The rest of the report is for council's consideration if they think that this is a good method that we're moving forward with, and of course always open to input.
Okay. So the way I read the report, we have, I was just rereading this afternoon, 8 that we have budgeted, or sorry, 4 that we have budgeted for Public Works, 2 for administrative staff. I just like clarification from Claudia, exactly what do we already have budgeted for before we go into that next, you know, when we actually talk about the 5-year plan. if we were to hire, because the way I read this, we could have upwards of 10 to 14. So how does that work in our budget?
Thank you, Mayor Wickstrom. Yes, we actually have already budgeted the 4 Public Works summer students. That was part of the budget. With the harbor, there were, at this point, not having harbor manager we've actually had some money budgeted for that, even with the time that Emma was gone between the two. So we do have some money to cover that. But the reality is that to hire a lot more students, we would need that wage subsidy, which we have not heard, to my knowledge, yet, whether we received it or not. But if we have received it, then we're just showing you, you know, the cost to the town is not exorbitant, and that's carried in the budget. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. Just wanted to know what we had budgeted and what would we possibly need to increase before this final reading, or tentatively increase, were we to hire more people?
Well, how that if you look at the wages there, that's basically what we would have to increase our budget, depending on how many more people you're going to hire. I believe, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn for the Public Works, but one of the concerns was the, even with the self-distancing that we're still involved with today, is having to hire too many more would be difficult to either find work for them, because you're going to have somebody supervise them. They can't work on their own. So we, but the Public Works foreman, I'm sure, could speak more in regards to how many more he could actually handle in that department.
Sorry, go ahead, Councillor Cole.
Yeah, I thought just before Julian maybe speaks to that, I had a question along those lines. On page 21, under Public Works, it lists, you know, a bunch of bulleted jobs, I guess. But the first job, supplement grounds maintenance of regular crews. To me, it seems like that's all the summer students are doing, is like weed whipping, and I saw them do the hydrants. So I'm really wondering if any of this other stuff is feasible to be done, when in the past it's just been, to me, it seems like just mostly ground maintenance occurring. Thank you.
Sorry about that. I was being distracted by a conversation outside my door. My apologies. What was your question, Councillor Cole? Sorry about that.
Yes, it was for Public Works, for Julian. The supplement grounds maintenance of regular crews is listed as the first item, and then there's a whole bunch of other items. And from my observations, it just seems like our summer students are weed whipping all the time and not doing any of these other projects. So I'm wondering how feasible it is that any of this other work is going to get done if we're essentially hiring the same amount of people. Thank you.
Go ahead, Julian.
So, yeah, in answering Councillor Cole on that, I think basically there's a list of activities there that we could increase upon, like, you know, as per the normal grounds maintenance, etc. If we had more summer students or youth employment. Basically, the grounds maintenance, which is mowing and weed eating, cleaning up catch basins, fire hydrant maintenance, and painting. Those 4 activities eat up the lion's share, like 90% of 4 summer students that I regularly ask for each year. So with 4 extra youth employees, what we tried to do was list one or two or several extra items that could be accomplished with that extra, with the extra employees. As our CFO mentioned, like it becomes a logistical issue with not having enough vehicles to transport everybody safely, PPE, supervision, that sort of thing. But if we did increase or double the amount of students, that's 4 extra students would basically be the max that I could sort of handle. We would be expected to have them doing some building maintenance, like minor repairs, painting, that sort of thing, trail maintenance, labor, like helping us dismantle the recycling shed, for example, that sort of thing, which would drive that cost down. That's, I think, what we were trying to capture there.
Excellent. Thank you for explaining that.
Okay.
And I guess my question is that trying to articulate how much more in anticipation, or can we move some money around within the budget? Because later on, we're going to be giving final reading to the 5-year plan.
Question for...
Sorry, that was for Claudia. My apologies.
Yeah, okay. Yep.
Thank you, Mayor Wickstrom. Yeah, we do have some money going into surplus at this particular time. So that is money that we could conceivably take out of surplus and use. And because it's not, I don't think you'd be looking at an exorbitant amount of money. Maybe 20,000, something along those lines, I am thinking.
Okay, thank you. And how many summer students did we apply for?
We applied for 18 summer students total.
Okay. And so what happens if we get them and it's more than we can manage? That would be for Julian.
Thank you, Mayor Wickstrom. CAO and CFO and myself actually had a meeting last week to discuss exactly that, as to if there was, very good funding for any extra over and above the 4 summer students that I typically handle, what would be the maximum? And we basically figured 4 more, so 8 summer students total would be about all we could actually manage as far as the points that I previously mentioned.
Okay, great. And so then the others would be within the report here too, perhaps in the office and some at the harbor and that kind of thing.
That would be over and above Public Works, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Councillor Mitchell, sorry, you had a question?
My question, I guess, would be for Pete or Claudia, I'm not sure, is what is the timeline for getting word on our application for, because we're running out of time, so there must be a deadline. When can we anticipate an answer? That's all I have, thanks.
Mayor Wickstrom. Yeah, so we were supposed to hear back. The earliest date that the youth employment students could start is May 11th. We were anticipating an announcement prior to May 11th. We haven't heard yet. Our finance assistant, Laura Evans, has reached out to the youth employment program with exactly that question. Time is drawing tight on the hiring process, and just looking to see why an announcement hasn't been made yet. So hopefully we'll have a response from them in the next couple of days.
Okay, thanks, Pete. Appreciate that.
You're on mute, Mayor Wickstrom.
I'm on the ball today. Go ahead, Councillor Cole.
Okay, I noticed the Canada Youth Employment Program it's usually like a 4-month window, but they've extended it to February 28th, 2021. So my question, I guess, to Pete and maybe Public Works is, have you guys considered the fact that that's been extended and how we could take advantage of that? Perhaps if Julian's only able to supervise 8 people at a time, well, maybe we're spreading that out over a longer term. We've got another 4 hired for a few more months after that, or something to that effect. And then I guess for Claudia, is there any advantage to that late date in terms of budget? Could that come out of next year's budget or something if we decide to take advantage of that late date? So I guess sort of a question for, and an observation for Julian or Pete, and a question for Claudia regarding the budget and that later date. Thank you.
Whoever wants to go first at answering that, go ahead, Pete.
Thank you, Mayor Wickstrom. I wasn't aware that that deadline was of the use of it was being extended to February 2021. I thought that I had read that they were extending the application to the end of February 2020, but I may have misread that. So that is something I'll have a look into, and something that Julian, myself, and Claudia can definitely work into a plan. I think the biggest crux of that would be availability of the youth employees should school go back in September.
Yeah, if we're overfunded, let's say we have too many that could possibly be managed. Yeah, it does say here that it's been extended to February 28th, so perhaps there might be a student that would be available. Did you want to mention something, Councillor Cole?
Yeah, I think you hit it on it there. I think they're extending this program so students can, continue to work if they don't go back to school, I think, for the next term, for the intention. But yeah, if we could consider that for the future or make note of that, future decisions, that would be great. Thank you.
So I think that this was mostly for, correct me if I'm wrong, Pete, for information so that when we do find out what summer students we get, we can move fairly quickly on this, correct?
Thank you, Mayor Wickstrom. Yes, and definitely, as this is going to guide our near future, any input that Mayor and Council have on where they would like to see some of this youth employment go in our community, definitely appreciated.
Councillor Downey, did you have anything you wanted to add to the conversation? I wasn't sure if I saw you with your hand up there.
No, I didn't.
Okay. Yeah, I know that the museum has been a topic for us, so I see an opportunity there to be able to employ some students at the museum to get that ready for next year and do some work. Plus, I think it would be great to have a fresh vision of some, younger people bring a completely different lens to something, and I think it would be great to have their input on that. Okay, so you will be letting us know when the funding comes in, and I imagine then, what do you need from us? Just a tentative yes, 10 or 12, or what do you need from us, Pete, this evening?
I don't think anything this evening, because it will be driven by the announcement of how much funding we are getting. Oh, Councillor Cole's got his hand up, so
go ahead.
We do need something.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry.
That's okay.
One more question with regards to the museum, Claudia. Do we still have roughly 20 or 25,000 budgeted for the museum? And I guess my thought there is we could tap into those funds perhaps for the summer students. And if it was that the intention, I guess.
Councillor Cole through the mayor. Yes, actually, we've taken that into consideration when we were looking at these numbers here. We had, I believe the amount was normally $12,000 to $13,000, and it was down to $4,000 because of the timing, and that was what we were told would be needed. So that would cover a student. We've already actually included that into the idea of the harbor, with possibly going to the museum and using some of those funds too.
Thank you.
Councillor Downey?
Sorry, just to clarify then, so in the document it says that if there's no Canada Youth Employment funding, we can maintain 4 employees in Public Works and 3 to 4 employees in the harbor and the information center. Is that the direction of staff at this time?
Mayor,
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, right now that is what we could afford to employ. With the harbor essentially being closed at this time, with international travelers not being able to come up and through, there's not a lot of work to keep them employed at the harbor. So the 3 to 4 is depending on what the announcements are as far as this pandemic. If the borders get loosened, if we start to see more traffic coming up to Port McNeill, then we're definitely going to have to look at putting more people into the Harbor Information Center. And if not, we could have a couple. Should we work on the museum? Working in the museum over the summer as representatives of the museum, perhaps cataloging or just tidying up if that is a direction that we do go.
Councillor Downey?
Just a comment and maybe a caution when it comes to the Visitor Info Center. I don't know that we should be writing it off so quickly. There is an anticipation and an expectation that as things change over the summer and restrictions are loosened, actually, and not even so much restrictions, but as we are navigating our way through COVID, we are expecting people to come into the area either by boat or traveling through, and that's a conversation that's happening, at the tourism level, is around should we be inviting in people from abroad and expect and plan for visitors from within our region. We won't get the international travel, that's absolutely correct, but that doesn't mean we won't get visitors here from Campbell River, Courtenay, Vancouver, Victoria. So I think that we have to sort of have in the back of our mind and a plan to staff for the Visitor Info Center and the harbor.
Yeah, I was on a call today as well. Perhaps you're on the same one with DBC, and they were chatting about that. It's interesting because the government is saying stick close to home, and yet the next phase sees the opening of hotels. And so that does pose a problem, an interpretation for residents of various communities, because they're feeling like it means don't go anywhere, but it's definitely the next phase is to open up the economy a little bit more and attract those within our province, and possibly Alberta is what I was hearing, but there'll be a lot of close end travel. So yeah, and people, I think you mentioned it earlier today, Pete, people are showing up even right now when they're being encouraged not to travel. And that's the important thing to remember, is these are recommendations, they are not orders. And so people are already traveling, and likely when the restrictions are, or the recommendations are eased, we'll see more. I would tend to agree with Councillor Downey. So, okay. And that's it then there. I have lost my agenda. Here we go. So move to receive. All in favor of receipt? Okay, opposed, carried. Thank you. Thank you for that. 8A, bylaw 697, 5-year financial plan, 2020-2024 for third and final reading. Motion for that, please. Moved. Seconder. Councillor Mitchell. Any further discussion on this? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Just give me a second here. 8B, bylaw 698-2020, tax rate bylaw, third and final reading. Motion for that, please. By Councillor Downey, seconder. Councillor Barron. Any further discussion on the tax rate bylaw? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Sorry, is that in favor or opposed? All in favor? There was some delayed. So, okay, great. Opposed, carried. Thank you. 8C, bylaw 696-2020, Town of Port McNeill zoning amendment bylaw, third reading. So motion for that so we can discuss.
procedurally, can I just ask, we're not actually moving the bylaw to discuss, or we're moving receipt of the report?
Pete, could I get clarification? So if I'm looking for a mover and a seconder, that doesn't mean that it will necessarily get third reading. It's just to move it for discussion. Is that correct?
You could do it that way, yes. If you just want to receive the report for discussion.
We can do it that way instead. Okay, so move for discussion. Seconder on that? Okay, Councillor Downey. Great. So I wrote up this report, basically just trying to find out from council if you go to the conclusion, should the majority of council wish to rezone this property, there are some things that I am looking for. So I guess I'm looking for council's appetite. First of all, I don't want to have a lengthy discussion if it's leaning towards not rezoning, and if it is, what are you looking for from the applicant? Anybody? Go ahead, Councillor Mitchell, and then Councillor Cole.
First of all, I find it unusual to be discussing the passage of a motion without having the motion on the floor. I'm not aware of any procedure that would allow that, but we're doing it. So we're discussing it, but we can't vote on it. We have to move it before we can vote on it, and it hasn't moved yet. So let's make that clear. So,
yeah, I would have asked for a motion then after that.
I am absolutely and unequivocally opposed to changing the zoning on this piece of property. And part of the reason is because, and only part of it, because even if they did it, I would still be opposed. But part of it is that the proponent needs to come and show us at the time of application what they're going to do to bring that property into compliance with the zoning that they're requesting. And today already, a letter comes in asking us if what we're going to do about this deck, or can I apply for a variance? Like, we haven't even voted to accept the zoning, and already, or that'll be the deck. First of all, the parking, of course, is not in compliance. There's not enough parking on that piece of property the way it's currently laid out to comply with the bylaw. There's one parking space, maybe two if you're lucky, that actually are on the property, because you can't park the way they've got it laid out. It's not legal. It doesn't meet our bylaw. Then there's a whole bunch of other things. Is the place currently only occupied by 3 tenants? Because I spoke with a tenant who told me there were 4 people living in there, 4 suites occupied. So are they even complying with the stop work order? I don't know. Has it been verified that they're complying with the stop work order that was issued? This whole process says to me that we just need to stop it. So I'm not in favor of changing the zoning. I'm quite content with the zoning the way it is. And if I lived on Beach Drive, I certainly wouldn't be in favor of it. And I'm not in favor of spot rezoning to solve a problem that wasn't our making. And if anything, we should be returning this piece of property to its current zoning, which is an owner-occupied residence is allowed to have 1 suite in it. If there's no owner occupation, it isn't allowed to have any suites. And in my view, that's where it should be going back to. And no more to say on that. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Cole. You were next.
At this time, I'm opposed to passing bylaw 696 for some and other reasons that Ryan outlined, Councillor Mitchell. My main reason is it just seems irresponsible to me to make such a big decision ahead of our planned official community plan. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess my only comment to that would be how, not just this one, but others. Do we wait for the next 2 years to anyone coming to us? It's just a question I'm not necessarily looking for an answer for, but that's where I have I hear what you're saying, Councillor Cole. It's a valid decision, or it's a valid point. My only concern is how long do we then keep things sort of in suspended animation for some people. Councillor Barron or Downey, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
I too struggle with popping an apartment zoned property in the midst of residential. And as the zoning bylaw stands right now, that's the only classification that would be suited to go from a what's R1 to a multi-dwelling. And so just to pop that in there, knowing that we have a planning process that's underway. I, however, though, would say that spot zoning may be a way to address this. This property has operated for many years as a threeplex. However, one stumbling block for me is that there was a significant amount of work that has happened on this property. And my understanding, and staff, please correct me or inform me, is that we really don't know if inspections were done and if they were done at the critical stages regarding electrical and plumbing. And, you know, we are unaware whether this property has conformed to the building code and other related codes that would give us an assurance that we aren't popping a building that could be a risk to the residents surrounding it. So it's unfortunate for the proponent, but just the way it's come around, the apartment classification is not the right zoning for this. So as the motion or as the bylaw stands right now, the amendment that's been requested, I can't support it as it's written currently.
Okay. Councillor Barron?
Well, I think there's two pieces to this. There's the rezoning, and then there's compliance. And if we take compliance out of it, and what led us to the application, the way that we're looking at it, if we ziplock that for a minute, it seems like we don't have a zoning that fits what's there. I mean, we had mentioned about the idea of a covenant, you know, and I apologize if I'm taking Jeff Long out of context here, but the spot zoning would allow us to say what you've got is what you keep, I think. And then I think that if that route was pursued, and I don't know procedurally, is that up to the proponent to then come, like, does this bylaw not get passed, and then the proponent comes back and requests special zoning, for lack of a better word, to be zoned as they are, and actually then presents to us, this is how I'm going to maintain or meet the requirements of building, just even building code and fire code. Is it feasible to do that, and then on the second side look at the compliance? Because like everybody's kind of said in pieces, we don't really know what has happened there. I've heard 3 residents, I've heard, or 3 units, 4 units, you know, 3 units from the end of time. Like, because there is a bit of an idea too, if somebody else has something like this going on in their house and they want to step forward and say, I want to be in compliance, how do we handle that one if it's not colored with the way that this rezoning application came forward?
Before, I don't know if you want to answer, Pete, but Councillor Downey, you had something to add there?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Wickstrom. Just the one thing that came apparent during the discussion around cannabis retail shops in town is the is the condition of our zoning bylaw. So that was raised at that time. When this council first gathered, the zoning bylaw and the state of it was raised as something that needed to be addressed. So I know that I mentioned the OCP is a process we're undergoing. However, our zoning bylaw needs to be addressed. And you know, if we're delayed in the OCP due to COVID, that doesn't mean we maybe can't start getting going on the zoning bylaw. And perhaps within there, we can start setting out the framework and expectations for residents in town or new builders wanting to come to town or change properties around their use. But we have work to do on that zoning bylaw, and I don't believe that can wait. It's been delayed too long already.
I would tend to agree with you. Councillor Cole, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yes, I love Councillor Downey's idea there. We should have the budget, money in the budget, and it was part of a bunch of the proposals we had for our OCP. So that would help address Mayor Wickstrom's concern about, you know, dragging this out and waiting. I also am concerned about if we try to work with this proponent about the amount of staff time that will take, covenants, etc. Pretty complicated file. It has been to this point. There's been a lot of time spent on it, I think. And it's, you know, dealing with the day-to-day stuff is part of the town office's job, but it's not a strategic priority identified this time.
So do I hear an, would you like to put that into a motion for, are you looking at having a rezoning application, zoning amendment bylaw put in place, Councillor Downey? Like for staff, for us to hire somebody to take a look at that and to bring one forward for us, and because we don't have a robust one, as was pointed out. Go ahead, Pete.
Thank you, Mayor Wickstrom. Having a rewrite of the zoning bylaw was part of our RFP package. So for the bidders that bid on doing the official community plan, they've also allotted time to redo our zoning bylaw. So it may look at having to reissue another RFP if we want to get started on the zoning bylaw prior to the official community plan being adopted.
Okay. Councillor Barron, go ahead, and then Councillor Mitchell.
Procedurally, if we don't read this bylaw tonight, does that leave the door open for the proponent to come back, or I just don't want to, you know how like if we talk about it and then you're the only one that can bring it back, does it go under a new application then? Or how does that work procedurally if we don't give this third reading tonight?
Go ahead, Pete. And
thank you, Mayor Wickstrom. It depends. If council tables this, then it doesn't get third reading and it would move forward to another council meeting. If as Councillor Mitchell indicated, if there was a motion on the table for third reading and it got defeated, then the bylaw is defeated and the applicant would have to wait. I believe our policy or bylaw says they have to wait 6 months prior to applying a second time.
okay. Is there is council willing to entertain a tabling of this for? Go ahead, Councillor Cole.
I would like to make a motion. We vote on the third reading.
Okay, so you move that, seconder. Okay. For the discussion, Councillor Mitchell, you did want to say something, or are you okay with that for now?
No, I'd like to vote on it.
Okay. All right, any further discussion? All those in favor of third reading? And those opposed? And yeah, I would just say, I just wanted to add that I was opposed because I would have been for if we had certain requirements met. I wasn't opposed for the rezoning as it was presented. Okay, so the motion is defeated then.
Was that unanimous, Mayor Wickstrom?
Yes, it was.
Thank you.
Okay. 10 A1 Canada Day. I asked to put this on the agenda, or I put this on the agenda. I didn't ask, I put this on the agenda because we did have an email come out, and I'm not necessarily looking for something today, though it would be great if you could tell me, but we do have a Canada Day committee. We do recognize that we cannot have a Canada Day celebration the way we had it before. And they have offered to extend the money that we received in order to have some sort of a party afterwards. We didn't hear back from a lot of you, any of you actually. And so I was just wondering what the thought was. You know, if you had any kind of an idea, and I think we really need to wait just a little bit longer till we hear what the next stage recommendations look like, because I think if they're a certain way, we could possibly have a block party where people on a street get together in clusters of say 30, social distancing on Canada Day, having a barbecue, and maybe we could use those funds to, you know, I think there are ways to get people together, but we still need to see what that next phase is. And if it just doesn't look like it's feasible, then put your hats on and think of what great party we can have when this is all over. Any thoughts just off the hop? Okay.
Block party is a great idea.
Yeah, and I think we really need to hear though what you know, what are some of the eased restrictions and the guidelines or the instructions from Dr. Bonnie Henry around those. So I know that we did a block party in Mississauga, and if Mississauga can pull it off, I'm certain that Port McNeill could do it too.
Can you remind me how long until we either return the funds?
Ooh, Pete, did you have that probably not off the top of your head?
No, I'm afraid I don't have that off the top of my head. Apologies.
I think it was into next year, I'm pretty sure.
I think we're trying to do something, and maybe Canada Day gets celebrated in December instead. I don't know.
That would be fun, wouldn't it, if you just had a Canada Day and have Santa come? Yeah, we can make it pretty much anything we want. I'm sure there's not going to be a problem. 1, celebrating, and 2, spending the money. So anyway, just put your thinking caps on. And I still have a committee that's willing to throw either a Canada Day celebration or just a plain old party. So, okay, 10A, councillors' reports. Is there anybody who wanted to give a verbal report? Go ahead, I'll start with Councillor Downey and then Councillor Barron.
Since our last meeting, I attended a Vancouver Island North tourism meeting, and I also attended a health network meeting, and I'm lumping them together for this reason, is that the meetings, as far as structure and getting work done, everything has been derailed and set aside as due to our current situation. So both meetings ended up being more opportunities for members on the committee just to share what's happening within their realm of area of responsibility. And so that is primarily what took place at those 2 meetings. And I'm not going to give you details because there's just too much, but there is a discussion about how do we bring back, what does tourism look like? Is tourism dead, or do we look after and go for the locals and and make a plan to welcome and bring them into our community. And with that, I just want to say I was in North Vancouver last week. I was down there to help our daughter move out, and I was in charge of the baby. So we did a lot of walks. We had to pick up food in a grocery store one day, and we also picked up takeout. And I have to say, I was very surprised at the ability to move through the city of North Vancouver and literally touch nothing. Doors were left open, tap at tills. Like, there was very little opportunity for spreading a virus, I'll say. Even walking down the street, people would keep a wide path from each other. In fact, turn their backs, almost turn their head away from each other, you know, if it was, you know, a little bit closer than the 6 feet. And so I saw people very conscientious in how they manage their behaviors and their actions. And that made me think, are we, you know, we've issued out notices, don't come later, stay away. Maybe we're doing it wrong. We have a great area up here. There's a lot of space. If your option is downtown Vancouver when it hits 30 degrees in the middle of summer, is, you know, we have something here to offer. You know, whether we in our municipal campsite just rope off every other site so that is how we purpose to keep a distance within that facility itself. You know, putting out rules of operation and procedure. But I think that we need to have those conversations. You saw the email, everybody, from Alan Jackman, and boaters are coming into the region from within BC. They're coming into the area, and when they radio them at the dock, they're very, very clear, and they say, you know, because of the current conditions right now, we will give you fuel for your boat. If you need supplies, email us your list or give us your list, and we'll do your shopping for you. So they themselves are already managing that. So I was not aware that boats were coming to the region, but that's because they're not actually getting off their boat. But at the same time, they are getting the services they need, and then off they go out into the Broughtons. I contacted our local grocer to find out whether this would be a problem if tourism came. Can you meet the demand? And I spoke to one person. I need to do a call back to a higher authority, but the sentiment is that yes, they can meet demand, and it's things are getting better at their warehouses. So that's a conversation I think we need to have. You know, not tonight, but another time. Is what do we as a town? Where do we sit on that spectrum? Are we going to open up and welcome people into our community? Or are we putting a barricade at the entrance of our town? So.
Yeah, I think part of that discussion is going to be had with the regional district, community futures. I think I forwarded that on to you. I think that's part of the plan with all of that as well. Yeah, good points, Councillor Downey. Councillor Barron?
I did have a discussion with James Fernie from the museum. And he said that no problem getting the letter done up. I've poked him again to actually get pen to paper. I gave him a bit of an idea of kind of some of the things we were talking about, and he was just excited that there was some enthusiasm, because I think it's the same as everything else. You get the same group of people, and eventually things kind of dry up. But he was excited that there was still a want of keeping some of the history and the stories alive. I also spoke with our Fire Chief, Dean Tate. There has been requests from BC Wildfire for information on what sort of availability our fire department could be able to provide. I know I'm getting pressure at work from them. They want to have things set up and ready to go in anticipation of a worst case scenario. So it is going to be on the agenda for the next meeting, because the last summer, we had kind of put some restrictions on the travel. So I'm kind of hoping that everybody can think about that before the next meeting, so that we can have a good discussion around how our fire department can fit into the BC wildfire if it's needed. And they need to get something off to BC wildfire sooner than later.
Yeah, and I have requested that our draft policy we did last year is put on the next agenda. And I was just wondering, Pete, if that would be possible for you to email it out well in advance so that we could take a look at it over the next couple of weeks instead of just the Thursday prior, please.
Thank you, Mayor Wickstrom. Yes, absolutely no problem. I can send that off tomorrow.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Councillor Mitchell? You're on mute. Yeah, sorry.
Thank you, Gabby. Sorry. I had quite a conversation with a couple of different business people this week regarding opening up our town for business. In some cases, there's really cautious optimism. I'd say all caution on both accounts, the two different folks that I spoke with. I'm just wondering if perhaps we could maybe have either a committee of the whole or a special council meeting before the next meeting to just focus on this and no other issue. And perhaps maybe we could toss in the firefighters' concerns as well. Just a meeting just focuses on a narrow amount of issues and debate it. You know, we could talk about it maybe in a bit more depth, because I think we do need to move, as you've indicated, to opening up our community. We have to try and think about keeping some of these businesses alive and what the cost of that might be and how we can do it in the most safe way and so on. So anyway, that's my suggestion. If it's appropriate, I'll make a motion to that effect.
Just before you do that, I believe I forwarded on an email to everybody to participate. If I didn't, I will write it on my note, but there's a meeting with that Pat English is spearheading on this exact issue. And so I think it might be a really great idea for us, those who can make it, to participate in it. It's going to have to be business led, but certainly for us to be in on the conversation so that we know what our role is going to be in order to support businesses. And then from that discussion, I think post that discussion probably would be a good idea to get together as a council and chat. I can certainly set a committee of the whole meeting to talk about what our role could be. Go ahead, Councillor Mitchell.
We're really clear about we'd like you to come at a later date, not now.
Oh yeah, it would all be, yeah.
So I would like us to make a statement that says, this is the later date. You're welcome to come. If you live on Vancouver Island or in British Columbia, we would like you as a visitor, whatever, however we're going to do that. But I think we need to get to that step now, because we've done the 6 weeks or so of no visitors. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll make a note on that, certainly, because we did do a letter at that time asking for people to visit at another time. So it would be absolutely appropriate to make a statement. I don't know if the rest of the council agrees with me, and I think it would be possibly jumping the gun just a little bit. I'd like to sit in on one more provincial meeting on Thursday, wrap my mind. If there's any particular questions that you want us to ask of the government, and then definitely I will forward that other meeting to you. Go ahead, Councillor Downey.
I like the request to have a committee of the whole to discuss this a little more informally ahead of an announcement, because there are a lot of pieces to be considered here, and we do have to consider the comfort level of our citizens, as well as the the position that our businesses are in as well. So there's a balance in this, and I think we need to have a robust discussion amongst ourselves, and gives us a bit of time to do a little bit more, have more conversations out in the community as well ahead of that. So I'd appreciate that meeting if we could.
Yep, absolutely. I've written it down, and I will make a commitment to council to do that prior to any statement. As the mayor, I wouldn't even. I shouldn't say I wouldn't know how to formulate it, but I wouldn't formulate a letter without all of council's input anyway. So absolutely, I will commit to doing that. Okay, and I will forward the other information on to you that Pat had sent as well. Okay. Any other questions? Go ahead. Oh yeah, no, any other reports? Go ahead. Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Mayor Wickstrom. Yeah, just a few things to report on. Mayor Wickstrom and I did a Q&A with the chamber via Zoom. I think that was a kind of good platform. It'd be good to get some more people on there. The VINTAS, which is the Vancouver Island North Training and Attraction Societies, zooming away as well. We are focusing on a business and entrepreneur attraction strategy, which previously was going to be more hands-on and involved a conference. Now it's going web-based, but we're in the process of hiring a coordinator for that. So that's pretty exciting. I think, especially with sort of the times we're in, there's a good opportunity here to attract people to Port McNeill. The core of that group, the Fundamentals of Forest Harvesting Practice program, has been deferred until next year, but we do have the funds in place to continue with that when things settle down here. Also with the regional district, I'm on the solid waste committee, and we just approved a plan in draft form. Essentially, the big thing there is involving a plan to expand the landfill. So it's good to see that that is moving forward. I did have a question for Councillor Downey regarding the health network, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just wondering the status of the Foundry application, and probably on hold, but just wondering if there's any information on that. Thank you.
I have no new information, but I can ask the question for you and get back to you.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. Great. Yeah, my report was forwarded. It accidentally got missed. I guess the only thing that, because people have asked, on May 6th, I attended a regional district meeting with WFP, and one of the things that came up was the status of the railway. And so work has begun with decommissioning the railway, removing the tracks, and there has been no discussion or no decision yet as to what to do with the that system once everything's been removed. But that's underway and should be finished by the end of this year. Quite a bit sooner, actually. I think September or October. So that's well underway, and that's what's happening there. I just wanted to, I know that this is council report, but you can take that off the screen there, Pete, please. Thank you. I did want you just, Pete, if you could tell, is it called Opening Up? I found it very interesting that you're following a protocol from the government, something that I hadn't even heard of in any of the phone calls that I was a part of. And there was a lot of really good information. I was just wondering if you could share that with council, please.
Thank you, Mayor Wickstrom. Yes, I can forward the documents. I received them. I do believe it was either last Thursday or Friday. I just started reviewing them on Monday. It's quite a thick package, but it's called the Go Forward Management Plan, and it came from the Ministry of Housing and Development, and it's basically some information on how communities can start to move forward. But like I said, I just started reviewing quite a thick set of precedents, procedures on Monday. So I'm yet to formulate an opinion on the plan. I will forward that to council as well, though.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, and there are no items to be from in camera to be made public, but I need a motion to go in camera under section 91C, labor relations and other employee relations. Councillor Downey, Councillor Barron, seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. So questions from the public. I do see that there is a question in the chat box. And the question comes from Lynn Wilson. Have the summer students already budgeted for, already been hired? So have the summer students that are budgeted for, have they been hired? Pete, would you like to take that, please?
Thank you, Mayor Wickstrom. We deferred most of the hiring to the meeting today to get council's input on our youth employment plan. However, there have been a couple of key youth employees from years past brought in to get us a head start. So based on the results of today, we will look at going through our resumes as received. And that will include the employees that applied for pool positions. We're going to, pardon the expression, pool them all together and proceed with interviews to fill those vacant positions.
And sorry, I was reading while you were talking, trying to process two things. We have begun hiring for Public Works, correct?
That is correct. Right in its infancy, though. Like I said, we brought back some key employees that worked for us years previous. The interview process hasn't started yet, though.
Okay, great. Thank you. I see a question. Are there any more questions from the public? And appears not. So there's a question. Oh, wait a minute. There's a Q&A box and there's a chat box. So sorry, I have to go back and forth. So the question from now media. So the question is from Bill McQuarrie. With the announced increase, page 23 of the wage subsidy program to cover 100% of the provincial minimum hourly wage, does that, and if so, how does that impact your thinking about the overall student employment, affordability, and budget concerns? So I'll start with that, and then Peter, Claudia, you can go in. So I think from what I'm hearing from staff is that we have what we need in our existing budget, and that will certainly help us with perhaps not having to dig into any surplus that we have. But the overall guiding factor for us is safety for the students, how many we can employ and be managed by the current staff that we have, and union issues. So that's what's going to drive our overall numbers that we hire. Anything to add on that question from Claudia or Pete, or was that about accurate?
Thank you, Mayor Wickstrom. No, that I think that was a good answer.
Okay, and question number 2, with the employment period for youth, full-time and part-time extended to February 28th, 2021, would you consider extending the youth employment opportunities or adding winter projects not returning to school in the fall winter term? And I think what I heard from council is a resounding yes, especially if we end up with more funding than we actually need. That definitely, if there are those that don't return to work or to school, can't return to school or choose not to return to school, that we would look at fall winter employment for them. Any other questions? And I'm just going to go back to the Q&A. Okay. So seeing none, I'd like to motion to adjourn and go in camera, please. Oh, oops. First, seconded, all in favor, opposed, carried. Wow. Okay, so we'll thank you, everybody. We'll take just a quick 5-minute refreshment break, and then we'll go back in camera after that. Thank you, everybody. There'll be a new login for that.